Over the course of this year, we've seen a large influx in titanium moving out of the factory here, between tie driver upgrades, tie bolt upgrades, tie spindle upgrades. So we wanted to bring Dave Briggs in and have him give you a little insight on the properties of titanium versus steel and the physical aspects of it a little bit.
Your official title here, Dave?
Machinist? I have a bunch. It's not rare, which a lot of people think it's expensive because it's a rare element or a rare metal, which it's not. It's actually in the top 10 most abundant in the Earth's crust.
Here, a few miles south of Lake Placid, the largest producing titanium mine in the world.
It wasn't made something that could be used in any industrial capacity until the 1930s, and then really not even then, much, say about the 50s or 60s, before it was something that was actually that they could actually put into any kind of a production. Titanium's expensive mainly because of how difficult it is to make into an actual usable metal. Unlike some materials, gold, for example, comes out of the ground as gold. It doesn't need any refining. Iron comes out as an ore. It's a very simple process to get it purified to an ore that we can actually use. Titanium, on the other hand, does not come out as a pure ore. It comes out, it's a mixed in with other materials, so it needs to be purified. At high temperatures where it's purified at, it is reactive to oxygen. Reactive in such a way that it can cause explosions. So with titanium, as far as machining it or working it goes, titanium, while it is hard, it be kind of what they call gummy, where it can actually gall or tear to a certain degree while you're cutting with it. So the tools have to be very sharp, and titanium doesn't transfer heat real well. It holds it in a space. So it's basically, it'll hold it in the material right at the cut point and the tool, which tends to eat through tools very quickly. So you have to go slower to machine it, and you go through tooling faster. So even machining it, that adds the price to actually making a product out of a piece of bar stock. For example, this is a titanium elite spindle. It makes it out of steel and titanium. Same machine, same tools. The difference in time, this right here in steel takes about 8 minutes. In titanium, it takes about 17 minutes. All this and the steps it takes to do it raise the price dramatically, and that's basically where your pricing comes from. There are alloys of tie, from pure titanium to there's what they call alphas and betas, and there's a bunch of different stuff. What we use is an alloy called 6Al4V, and it's basically 6% aluminum, 4% vanadium. And that alloy allows us to heat treat the titanium. Doesn't make it extremely hard like some steels get, but it is definitely gives it a higher tensile strength than pure titanium. It's a hard metal, but it's also, it can gall very easily. In other words, it can actually tear to some degree, which is why you also never see it in ball bearings, and you'll never see it in a blade. But when it comes to structural pieces like spindles and bolts and things along those lines, it tends to work very, very well. Titanium has a very high corrosion resistance, which is why it's used a lot in marine and military type situations as well on the International Space Station. We use it mainly because of its strength to weight ratio. Titanium is about 60% of the weight of steel, while carrying about the same strength. When it comes to the difference between strengths in titanium and steel, they're both very strong. It just depends on the alloy of steel that it's going up against and what kind of load it's going to be under. So that's a really hard one to answer. But generally speaking, for your strength, they're very similar. The difference between the tie to the steel in that strength is really not much. That 99% of the people that have one are never going to notice. You know, you're not going to get to that edge, but it will have the edge on that torsion on the steel over the titanium. But like I said, for most everybody that's ever going to have one, tie is not going to be a problem. If you fail the titanium part, if it breaks because of misuse or weight or what have you, the steel one probably would have as well. It doesn't. That is basically apples to apples in many cases. You get into chromoly, what say most steel frames are made out of, what our cranks are made out of, spindles and what have you, they'll flex to a certain degree before they break. That is what you want in a lot of products like what we make because of impact. You get landing, you want it to give a little bit. If not, when you land it, everything would just shatter. So you always want to balance how much you can flex and give and come back to itself, and how hard it is. So you talk about heat treating. We heat treat a lot of our stuff. Everything's heat treated to a different level depending on what kind of load it gets. So that's a very important thing. Even our steel spindles, if we didn't heat treat them, most people would be fine, but some guys that are big guys or do some really big airs and land hard, they could actually slowly start to twist them. Unheat treated, it's not weak, it gives you that extra hardness. Because you want to spend a lot of money on material. A titanium stem on paper gains you something, only on paper.
But you would want flex on your front end. I would.
Well, but the aluminum stems don't flex anyway. You're not heavy enough or big enough or put enough load on it to flex it. Yes, titanium would flex less than aluminum. The problem is that stems are already way stronger than they need to be. Their bulk is because they have to be put on. We have tubes go through them. So some of that bulk has to do with the fact that you actually have to take them apart to be able to put things on them. But it's not a flex thing. In other words, you're almost never going to see anybody break a stem off right in between, like in that big bulk area there. It is almost never going to break there because the bolts are weaker. Other things will break first. So to make one out of titanium, it's really not gaining you any strength. I mean, any weight at all. If anything, well, you could make it slightly smaller because of the strength, but the weight is still going to be in the same ballpark, and it's just going to be really expensive, just because the material. Aluminum is so much cheaper than titanium is that it's overkill to make a titanium stem. At least the way a BMX stem is, or what have you. Maybe like the road bike styles that are kind of, you can have them out of tubing, like some of the older mountain bike ones. That you could do out of titanium tubing. That would be, you might be able to get something there, but a normal BMX style stem, it's hard to, I don't even know if you could beat aluminum. You could go to magnesium, which would be a little bit lighter, but magnesium's got its own issues. It's very expensive, it's flammable, it has a few different issues. Had our talk on titanium. We do make a number of products in titanium. You can upgrade from steel to tie spindles, tie bolts for hubs, tie bolts for cranks. All you do is check them out on profileracing.com. Again, this is Dave Briggs. Thanks.